5. So Graves' will resolve as well. As far as lands are concerned, both players have quite a few. 6 for Lossett, 5 for Graves, but he turns 3 over, 3 temples with his Jace.
Yeah, lands are pretty good here. It looks like Graves may have missed a beat on lands here and had to Revelation to get more cards. I'm not sure of how we got, of whether or not that's the case, but we'll get a count on hands. Looks like neither player is stumbling on lands at the moment.
And one thing you'll notice too is Graves was comfortable taking down his Jace because there's no Mutavault on the set side of the board. But you see one on Graves', so that's probably why Joe's Jace is at 5 right now. Looks like that elevator is going to go down to 3, so a couple of cards are going to roll off. You've got a Plains, you've got a Temple of Enlightenment, and an Island. So both players turning over to lands with their Jaces, which, to be fair, isn't a bad thing.
Yeah, not at all. You do see there is some threats in a threat in Joe's hand. He does have one of his Archangel of Thunes in his hand right now, but it's just about maintaining land drops right now in the game. I think this match has gotten really interesting now that players are siding in 6 to 7 creatures. It definitely feels more like a mid-range mirror to me when you see this sort of style playing against each other.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Players are being a lot more proactive, and I think that might be just a consequence of the format. You know, where you actually can't just be reactive with a lot of counter spells. It seems like that's a very difficult thing to do. You know, take, for example, Jund Monsters after sideboard. All your answers have to line up appropriately to beat them. You know, you can lose to Stormbreath Dragon or Mistcutter Hydra if you don't have the right answers on time, correct?
You can. You need to have, that's what a lot of these mid-range decks are doing, is they're asking lots of difficult questions and forcing you to have an answer. It's not always easy to have them, but it is easy just to have an Archangel of Thune. That answers a lot of things.
Yeah, just get them dead. Sometimes that's what's appropriate. Here's a Thoughtseize from Graves. We're going to see a Sphinx's Revelation. There's an Elspeth, a Syncopate, and a Dissolve, along with the Plains here for Lossett. So some really, really good cards over there for Lossett. I imagine that Revelation is the best one here, but situations do change, especially depending on what's in Graves' hand.
It depends on Graves' hand. The question is, can he win if Lossett just slams an Elspeth next turn and starts crashing with Archangel? Remember, Elspeth could make tokens. Archangel would then pump them all. It'd actually be a pretty sizable board. So he does take Revelation. The other reasonable thing, like he could have taken a Dissolve depending on what his hand is. Dissolve is actually one of the best cards in this matchup.
Syncopate not so great, but Syncopate basically says counter target Sphinx's Revelation.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised the Syncopate's in here post board. Usually you don't want Syncopate in control mirrors because of how much mana it takes to counter anything.
Maybe you can catch them by surprise.
You can catch them by surprise. Like I said, if you assume they're boarding out their Syncopates, well then Syncopate can become good again, which is kind of a little bit of a game with the card.
A Banishing Light is going to take care of that Archangel of Thune. So no 3-4 lifelinker here for Lossett. Mutavault's going to go after Jace. That's going to put that down to 1. And you followed it up with a land. That's all the mana for the turn for Graves. So pretty good turn there for Thomas, all things considered.
See, look, this is what I said when it's become mid-rangey. There's so much tapping out on both sides of the battlefield.
I know you hate that. I know.
I don't know why you would tap your mana during your own turn. It seems like the second best option.
Lossett draws a copy of Temple of Silence. We know about the Syncopate, the Elspeth, and the Dissolve along with that Plains. So Joe going to figure out what to do. A good place to start is by ticking up that Jace. They can't do anything else. And is it time to deploy the Sun's Champion, or do we leave up counter magic?
He's got to be careful. Elspeth is his last real piece of gas in his hand. He has a Dissolve, he has a Syncopate, some lands. That said, he's still doing well in that he has card draw going. He does have some control elements. Like I said, he has these counter spells, but gosh, he's going to go back for the tap out. And this is a play which I think is a little suspect because Thomas Graves saw Joe's hand, saw an Elspeth, and then chose to tap out. So if I'm Joe, I would be shocked if Thomas doesn't just have something to deal with this Elspeth.
Sphinx's Revelation, the draw here for Graves. He's going to take down his Jace. There's a Detention Sphere. That's a Revelation. And that is a Temple of Deceits. And so now, this is a tough split here because Graves' draw is what makes this really compelling because he drew Revelation. And normally you're scared of Revelation, so maybe you say, Revelation versus, and Graves says, that's perfect. Take my Sphere, take my land, Sphere your Elspeth or your Jace, which would take care of both of our Jaces, and I already have a Revelation. As Lossett asks Graves, how many cards do you have? The answer looks to be 5.
Well, here's the trick, is that I don't think Graves would have let him have the Elspeth if he didn't already have an answer to Elspeth in hand. So as it is, I like how Joe separated. He put the Revelation by itself, assuming, hey, I already think you have the Detention Sphere, so I don't think you're actually going to take it. Here, I'll put the Revelation by itself, as it's normally the best card. Because he has one Revelation, though, already, I think Graves is still going to take the Detention Sphere, which is what we saw.
Now he's going to deploy an Elspeth as well instead of de-sphering an Elspeth. This is an interesting play.
He gets it past counter magic, which is pretty good. If that last answer in his hand is Banishing Light, then this is fine. Otherwise, you don't really want a Detention Sphere in Elspeth when you have an Elspeth.
Temple of Deceit going to come in. Graves going to leave the top card on top before passing the turn back over to Lossett, who will untap those 6 lands. He's got 2 planeswalkers to work with, as does Graves. So now there are 3 soldier tokens in play right now. Mutavault will be the draw.
If I'm Graves, I'm almost like right now he's deciding to make this real mid-range, to clutter up the board with things. I think I would have preferred to play a control game here where you just start 1-for-1ing everything. I guess he doesn't want to play that because Joe has counter magic and he doesn't right now. That said, he does have Revelation. He has more cards at the moment, and he has Mutavaults, which are actually pretty important if you're going to play this drawn-out do-nothing game.
It's time for Elspeth tokens to trade very quickly. Continue.
Yeah, no, they'll trade pretty quickly. The Elspeth tokens don't really matter. What matters is that Joe's Elspeth is always at equal or higher loyalty. So that's going to force action from Graves.
Jace takes up as well. Lossett played his land for the turn, which was a Mutavault. He passes the turn back. So now Graves will draw a card. It was a Dispel. He'll take his Jace up to begin. I imagine Elspeth will be coming soon as well. So up to 6 that goes. Time for 3 more soldier tokens. So they're back. And Graves is, it's interesting because Graves' hand is quite good right now, but Lossett has these counter spells that are good as well. So there's a little bit of a tension here as Graves is going to tap 3 mana. He's going to put a Detention Sphere on the stack. No idea where this is going to go.
I mean, this is why I was curious, wondering about his play before. Are you going to Detention Sphere the Elspeth? It's going to get your own Elspeth. If you were going to make this play, I think you would have just played the Detention Sphere.
What I actually kind of like about this Detention Sphere is that it's a really, really interesting test spell. Like, if Lossett counters this, I don't think that Graves minds, because really, if you're Lossett, it's like, well, what are you going to Detention Sphere if I let this resolve? And how does that affect the game? I think that Joe might be a little unsure of what this D-Sphere is going to accomplish, and Graves might be saying, okay, well, I want you to counter this. Looks like we have a bit of a counter war over the Sphere. Dissolve will be countered by Dispel, or at least an attempt here.
Yeah, but what Graves knows is that this Dispel is syncopatable right now.
Yes.
He's turned on Syncopate, but it'll take all of Joe's mana.
Feels like he might be leading him into something here. At least that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah, it feels like it, but the thing is, the 4-mana spell that you normally lead them into, Jace, he's already on the board. If I'm Joe, I'm not... I guess what I'd be worried about... It's actually nothing to be worried about here. You just can Syncopate back.
So Syncopate's going to take care of Dispel. Again, Graves knew that Lossett had all those cards, so now those counter spells are gone. Yes, Lossett does get to Scry, of course, from the Dissolve, but again, it feels like to me that maybe Graves was leading him into this a little bit here. I want to see what his next play is going to be if he has one, and he doesn't have one. Okay.
Yeah, his last card is Deicide right now. Joe hasn't played a enchantment, so Deicide not really live. And Graves is actually in a tough spot now. There's about 1 more turn he has to answer this Elspeth.
One thing you have to keep in mind is Elspeth is going to take up to 7 here for Lossett is maybe all of that posturing was just so that Graves could resolve the Revelation that's in his hand. That may have been the case, but it looks like Lossett may have picked up a negate for the turn. Lossett going to hold that Plains that we've known about for a while, but that negate looks like it was very timely.
Well, yeah, and the problem is that he's a turn slow on Revelationing. Even if he gets that Revelation off, the emblem's coming down next turn.
That's true. He is behind on his Elspeth a little bit here. It's this posturing, this Elspeth sub-game that we have here, and who can win it. You often say that the person that has the first Elspeth gets the job done.
He forces action from the other player, and you never really want, you don't want to have to cast things. Joe's in an interesting spot as to whether he wants to draw with Jace or plus it. He opts to draw. The advantage to plussing it was that means he would get to keep all 6 tokens for a potential swing next turn. That said, getting Dissolve just seems amazing right now.
Yeah, those 3 cards that rolled off of Lossett's deck are really good. Nightfell Spectre, a Dissolve, and Sphinx's Revelation. Lossett's going to go with the Revelation. It's hard to pass up that powerful Mythic. He's going to put those 2 cards down to the bottom of his deck. So right now, Lossett will play the land, has a Revelation, but more importantly, I think here, he has a negate.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised Joe just didn't take the second Dissolve to just create a counter wall for this Elspeth. And it's not necessarily wrong either. It's possible that what he does play around here is if Graves just has a Supreme Verdict, maybe he makes an emblem, Graves Supreme Verdicts, then Joe doesn't get the job done.
Graves going to cash in his Jace, but he finds 2 more and a Nightfell Spectre of his own. So decisions on the split. These splits are not easy.
Well, if you're Joe, you're not really worried about Night Veil Spectre anymore. So, I mean, Graves, of course, can get a Jace. It depends whether you want a Jace pile or a Jace Night Veil pile. I guess what you have to think is that if Graves has an answer to what's going on, if you're in trouble here, you'd rather him have a Jace Night Veil than have Jace.
Jace Night Veil is what it's going to be. So a Jace will go to the bottom, a Jace will go to the grip, and a Jace went to the graveyard this turn. So there are Jaces everywhere. And now there are about to be 2 in play. So 1 for Graves and 1 for Lossett. Graves' Jace comes in. Lossett says that's fine. Lossett doing a really nice job of making it seem like all I have is Revelation. You can't really see through this negate that I top decked. Well, now you can because Lossett did stop it. So
stopped on the -2. Graves had a chance to peek at that top card, but we'll see what Joe wants to do. It looks like he's going to rev for all but 2, just showing his hand on the negate.
I kind of like maybe a rev for all but 3. I feel like this is a situation where he's basically saying, I hope I draw into a dissolve or something, you know?
Yeah.
Because it looks like the Jace has resolved and it's already down to 2. And I think what Lossett's doing here is, all right, in response to the activation, I would like to cast the Sphinx's Revelation, and it's going to be for 4.
Yeah, what he also is doing here, because he has the negate, he actually does have 2 dispels in his sideboard. So it looks like he's revving into dissolve, what he's actually revving into is dispel.
So 4 cards coming here for Lossett. Didn't get a good look at him, but we know that there is negate.
I really like that revelation by Joe there. It was done, I think it was done at a really good time in response to this. So now Graves, if he finds a counterspell, it's not as good. And because Graves has to tap out here for something to try to answer the Elspeth, what that means is that Joe knows that Graves can't afford to fight a counter war over this revelation. If he does, he'll just lose to Elspeth.
Thoughtseized Night Veil Spectre and land were the cards. Thoughtseized goes to the grip here for Graves. He's trying to figure out how he can work his way out of the situation, but it does not look to be very easy here. Gonna fire off a Thoughtseize.
And that Thoughtseize makes this Elspeth emblem lethal, actually.
Well, you have to imagine that Graves is going to attack with his soldiers into something. You know, so I feel like what's going to happen here is he's going to lose 3. It won't be lethal now, but I don't think there's any stopping an emblem from coming now. But, you know, again, this might be a situation where Lossett wants to get his Elspeth up to 8 and then tick down. Maybe.
If he does that, there's this worry, though, because then Graves can just make an emblem and kill Joe's Elspeth.
Yeah.
So you generally just have to make the emblem first. As much as you'd love to have the extra counter and then get the emblem and still have Elspeth now pumping out 3/3 flyers, usually you don't get to do it.
Again, it's this Elspeth subgame. We don't see it a lot in the mirror, but we are certainly there right now. Lossett with another Mutavault in his hand. I think that's a big draw. Having access to a 4/4 flyer, assuming he cashes in Elspeth for the emblem, is pretty big right now as well.
Yeah, once you have an emblem, Mutavaults become incredibly good here. They just destroy planeswalkers and do a pretty good job on life totals, too.
Well, he's cashing it in. It's time for an Elspeth emblem. That is a mouthful. But he's got one. All of his creatures for the rest of the game. +2/+2 and flying.
And this is why you don't always want to be behind on the Elspeth game, because Thomas is never going to get to cash in his Elspeth. Now, Joe's army should be able to take care of her.
So Lossett going to fire up his Mutavault. We'll see where things are going to go now. Graves, of course, the shields are down. All he has available is a Mutavault. Lossett taking a look at the life totals here. Thomas at 20. Lossett sitting at 18. Trying to figure out, all right, where do I want to go? What do I want to do? Looks like Graves might be a little lower maybe from the Thoughtseize. We'll find out.
I'm a little interested that he's going for Mutavault. So the options here is he can either ensure that Elspeth goes down by activating Mutavault, or what he can do is he can leave Mutavault back to block a counter swing by Night Veil Spectre. Looks like he's just going for the damage race. He's going to force Thomas to have something very quickly.
Spectre can help find that something, though. It's a scary card to see on the other side of the table.
Yeah, and that certainly is the scary part right now.
Looks like the set says, all right, I'm going to go a reach in here. This Flying Soldier is going to go towards Jace. These are going to go towards Mutavault. You've got a Jace trigger, excuse me, those are going to go towards Elspeth. There is a Jace trigger on the stack here, as it did tick up. Actually, no, that Jace ticked down last turn, so never mind. Yeah, there is no Jace trigger here.
I mean, that'd be great for Graves had it gone down, up, then he would be able to have a free block with Night Veil. But right now,
looks like Night Veil has to play defense on these soldier tokens. perhaps the one that's going after Jace.
I think that's right. So Night Vale just is basically a card drawer, and the best way that Night Vale can draw cards is by allowing Jace to survive this turn.
So there goes Elspeth. The second to play a Mutavault. Simply pass the turn back over to Graves, who's going to untap all of those lands. So there you see Joe with a Jace out there. And then those 3 soldier tokens, 2 Mutavaults, and that Elspeth emblem.
Yeah, lands and Deicide, not much help for Graves. He's going to have to first find a Supreme Verdict. The big problem is that he doesn't have any ways to answer these Mutavaults. In his deck, he could answer them had he kept in Doomblades and Ultimate Prices. I don't know how many of them he has kept in, but regardless, none of them are in his hand. And Joe, with his Elspeth emblem, has 17 power worth of creatures.
Yeah, and oddly enough, it's kind of weird, but Ultimate Price doesn't even get the job done on Mutavault because it isn't a colored creature. So it's really just Doomblades at that point that will get the job done. Graves is going to fire off the Thoughtseize. He'll take a look at Lossette's hand, which is nothing special, but it doesn't need to be at this point. What he needs is on the table. That's all he needs at this point. So the Celestial Flare is gone. 3 lands are there. Temple of Enlightenment being the most important one because of scrying. But all that Joe needs right now is what he's got on the table. A Jace at 2, which he can take up or down. He's got those soldier tokens and a couple of copies of Mutavault. Graves says, I'm going to Revelate right now on your upkeep to make sure that nothing bad happens. Also, I have no interest in discarding. So 7 cards coming here for Thomas. Even though things look bad for him right now, he could maybe get back in this one.
Yeah, it's possible. If he had something like Elixir in his deck, I would be a little more confident in it. Some way that he could just, Revelation for 7 and then 8 and then 9 for every turn. He would have to do something like next turn, if he could, maybe this turn draw Supreme Verdict and Azorius Charm and Dissolve. If he'd drawn all 3 of those off that Revelation, now then I would like where he would be. He could Charm a Mutavault, blow up the tokens, dissolve Losette's next spell, then Rev again. I don't think his Revelation was as powerful as that, but there are different degrees of how good it can be, but he'll need a pretty good one to stay in the game. I think Supreme Verdict is where it has to start.
Yeah, that Revelation turned over like a Jace and an Elspeth and some other cards. Normally that would be a pretty good Revelation, but given this situation, not so much. Yeah. Not so much.
Detention Sphere does work for the soldier tokens. Remember, Joe has 17 power, so Graves is going to go down to 8, which is just enough to make both the pair of Mutavaults lethal on the following turn.
Of course, the question here is how does Joe want to go about using these cards? So now he's going to come in the air with a 4/4 Mutavault and 3/3/3 soldiers.
All right, so that's going to be 13 damage. So he's looking at just the 2-turn clock then. He puts Thomas down to 12.
Going to cash in a Jace right now. There's an Aetherling. That is the Mutavault and Graves. After he sees Aetherling, he's going to pick up the cards. Joe Lossett is going to win this game and looks like he's going to win this match. 2-0. Blue-white control. Looks like it takes down Esper control. Not sure if either player is going back to sideboarding or de-sideboarding here. So make sure that this is the correct result here very quickly before we do move on to our next match. And it is. So Joe Lossett does win. 2-0. Moves on to 7-2.
Yeah. So when you have an Elspeth